89.1 The Bash. WVJC, Mount Carmel, Illinois. A Wabash Valley College broadcasting station. Support local music.
They do a lot with local music.
Support local music.
Very diverse as far as the music they play a lot of local stuff.
This is Megaphone Local.
There's a lot of good music out there that doesn't get any attention.
You can hear anything on here, and I love that, you know.
Support local music.
This is Megaphone Local, an 89.1 The Bash local music radio production.
Once again, we are live for Megaphone Local here at the 89.1 The Bash radio studios. We just had an episode on Friday. We featured Connor Michael from Fairfield, Illinois in studio. He played a few acoustic songs, some you may have heard, some unreleased, and it was an absolute joy of a time. We were lucky to have him come in and get that all sorted out. It was, again, such a good time. But we are back on schedule from Wednesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Central Time, and we got a lot of upcoming new artists from the Evansville, Indiana area, the Fort Wayne, Indiana area, a band from St. Louis, and other great musicians from across the tri-state and the 812. So lots of great music to get to. Our first band, from what I have gathered, hasn't released music in quite some time, and they might actually have disbanded, but don't quote me on that for 100%. You never know what's in the works for local musicians. So our first band is Thunder Dreamer. This from 2017, I believe it's Capture by Thunder Dreamer. I'll tell you a bit more about them. But first, our first song on this week's edition of Megaphone Local, it's Capture by Thunder Dreamer. To start things off, that was Capture by Thunder Dreamer. They have not posted on social media since 2023, I believe, so maybe on a bit of a hiatus, but nonetheless, very good stuff from the Evansville-based band, blending thoughtful, melancholic shoegaze and dream pop tones with a distinctly Midwestern heartland feel. Thunder Dreamer was formed in Evansville, Indiana by members Stephen Hamilton, Zach Zint, Alex Walwork, and Corey Greenfield. The band debuted in the summer of 2013 with a self-released, self-titled EP, following up a year later with their first full-length, Lonesome Morning. They also signed with 6131 Records, who has also signed in the past the artist Julian Baker, who is now a member of Boy Genius, featuring Phoebe Bridgers and Lucy Dacus. So the talent was definitely seen by this band. They returned in the spring of 2017 with their sophomore set Capture, which you just heard the song Capture from the album Capture by Thunder Dreamer. Up next, it's You Know Me by Thunder Dreamer, also from their 2017 album Capture. That was You Know Me by Thunder Dreamer, believed to be not making music any longer, but upon digging a little deeper, I did find that one of the founding members, Alex Wallwork, actually plays bass and is a vocalist for the Ambler band out of Evansville, Indiana, an alt-rock band, rather. He also, in some capacity, works with Fairy Ring, a Evansville heavy rock band, and a shoegaze psychedelic punk band, Stella Band, also from Evansville, Indiana. So Alex still in the music scene, very much so out there. So shout out to Alex Wallwork of several different bands out of the Evansville, Indiana. And shout out to Thunder Dreamer for having their music on the show. Again, I don't believe them to still be making music, but you never know what changes in the local music scene. So I definitely enjoyed what I heard, and I wish there was more. There is more music in their discography to be heard if you're interested, so go check them out on Spotify and as well as the other streaming platforms. But once again, thanks to the guys from Thunder Dreamer for being on the show, their music being on the show. This next band, rather, is from St. Louis. This actually came via a recommendation. I got an email from a fan of the show saying that this is one of their favorites out of the St. Louis area, so a bit of a vibe change from what we've had in the past. This is kind of like a blues punk band, but this is East St. Louis by the Bottlesnakes out of St. Louis, Missouri. Let's give it a listen.
I walked all the way from East St. Louis to town. And I wonder what's gonna come of me. I see a dark cloud rising, and I wonder what's gonna come of me. And when I die, won't you please remember me?
East St. Louis by the Bottle Snakes, a groovy retro blues band. The Bottle Snakes are a St. Louis-based acoustic duo featuring Ethan Linewand on barrelhouse piano and Nick Pence on resonator slide guitar. Drawing inspiration from the piano guitar blues of the 1920s and 30s, the Bottle Snakes combine groove-based songwriting and expert musicianship to create original, mostly instrumental music with a rollicking and rootsy vibe. So a blues and roots band from the city of St. Louis with East St. Louis. Again, that's the Bottle Snakes. One more from these guys. It's Bottle Snake Blues by the Bottle Snakes right here on Megaphone Local on 89.1 The Bash. Keep that dial tuned. St. Louis-based band, the Bottle Snakes, with a bit of a blues roots genre. That was Bottle Snake Blues by the Bottle Snakes. Both of the last two songs you heard were from their 2019 album, Candy Shop. Up next, it is Prairie Scout, a Bloomington, Indiana indie rock-based band, with Am I Different? I Wonder, from their 2025 album, What's Ahead is Behind Me. We'll tell you a bit more about this band, but first, this song by Prairie Scout, and then a short break, and back to more music from Prairie Scout. Am I Different? I Wonder.
I know you love me right now, but how can I guarantee forever? You saw the end with her, and then you were hurt. You healed, now you're better. Half of the time it works, the other half rejoins the numbers. I know you've loved before. The spiral goes out, am I different? I wonder. What would I give to go back? Knowing all that I know you love me right now, but how can I guarantee forever? You saw the end with her, and then you were hurt. You healed, now you're better. Half of the time, the other half rejoins the numbers. I know you've loved before. The spiral goes out, am I different? I wonder. What would I give to go back? Knowing all you had. What would you give to go back? To leave us
Many young athletes desire a future in athletics, but don't want to risk missing out on a career later in life. Why not combine the two? Take a look at the sports marketing and media degree offered at Wabash Valley College. Students in the sports marketing and media program will have opportunities to learn broadcasting and announcing techniques, log around 100 hours of real-world experience each semester, and even have the opportunity to visit ESPN production facilities. Start your future in sports marketing or broadcasting today by visiting iecc.edu/WVC. Be a leader. Be a warrior.
Support provided by attorney Ivan Arnez. You don't have to go to court alone anymore. Ivan Arnez practices criminal defense and family law. Arnez Law Offices can be reached at 812-424-6671 or online at ivanarnez.com. Blunt, honest legal advice Ivan Arnez, attorney at law, 812-424-6671.
One trip around the sun means nothing. I never felt this slow revolution. Like when kiss my neck, you've got my attention. You touch down. Now I'm standing on the edge of the crater you left in the ground. An alien life, a benevolent kind, lie hand in hand with the sound. I will always love you. I know space can be hard to move through. Thank you for touching down when you did. The first of many thousands. I'll never shut up 'cause I looked up one day and I found this. A trick to got you surrounded.
Eli Grimes here with you in studio for hour number 1 of Megaphone Local. You just heard an absolutely remarkable thing from an absolutely remarkable band. It's Prairie Scout, based out of Bloomington, Indiana. Prairie Scout started as the solo project of singer-songwriter Natalie Ingalls and grew to the current band composed of Julia Fagelman on bass, Wesley Davis on drums, and Jonathan Hasey on guitar. Influenced lyrically and sonically by folk pop icon Vashti Bunyan, contemporaries like Wednesday and Feeble Little Horse in the odd science fiction story, combined with the band's blues, punk, and jazz backgrounds, Prairie Scout puts their own twist on indie rock. Ingalls also is from Falls Church, Virginia, where she accumulated over 500,000 streams on Spotify, played at venues across Northern Virginia, and was nominated for a Whammy Award in 2022 with her band Indigo Boulevard. Also, for Prairie Scout, they have an upcoming show, not this Friday, but next Friday. It is the Goodbye Bloomington, the final show with A. Aardvark and Muzzle. That is July 11th at The Bishop Presents in Bloomington, Indiana. Music starts at 9 p.m., 21 plus $10 entry fee. So keep an eye out for Prairie Scout. I'm not sure exactly what the Goodbye Bloomington post means exactly. We'll see what comes from the band Prairie Scout, this next era of Prairie Scout, as they put it. But good stuff from the Bloomington, Indiana-based band Prairie Scout. We're going to keep it legal here, and then move on to a band we've had on in the past that we just want to give a little bit of a shout out. After this, keeping it legal, it's Tearful Warning.
89.1 The Bash, WVJC, Mount Carmel, Illinois, a Wabash Valley College broadcasting station.
Tearful Warning with Just You Wait off of their self-titled EP, Tearful Warning. We just wanted to give them a shout out. They were one of the first bands that we had on the show, and they just completed a crazy June run playing in Evansville, Indiana, of course, Nashville, Tennessee, Bowling Green, Kentucky, and Jasper, Indiana at the Jasper Riverwalk back on the 28th, just here a few days ago. So again, we just wanted to give them a shout out. They have been putting in the work, and go check them out. They just released, again, their self-titled EP back on May 30th. Lots of good tracks on that EP, including the one you just heard, Just You Wait, and this next one you're about to hear, I See It All, by Tearful Warning right here on Megaphone Local.
And all I do is just
Guiding Light by Memory Motel right here on Megaphone Local. That band out of Vincennes, Indiana, kind of the first band that we've had out of that region of Indiana. Great stuff from Memory Motel. They actually wanted that specific song to be played, and we're going to play two more from Memory Motel just because we can't leave you with just one song from a band. So up next, off of their nice, cool Panic Attack album, as was Guiding Light, this is Noose Around Your Name. Let's hear it again for the band out of Vincennes, Indiana. Memory Motel, that was Noose Around Your Name. Once again, from their 2024 album released in February of that year. Nice, cool Panic Attack. One more from the guys at Memory Motel. It's Overcoat. Thanks for being on the show, Memory Motel. It's Overcoat by Memory Motel out of Vincennes, Indiana on Megaphone Local on today's hit alternative 89.1 The Bash.
Sitting around and you hold the cold, making up lies that you know you won't defend with your only friend. Bright colors on your TV screen, say you don't know where your hopes and dreams fit in.
That was I'll See You in July by Gung Ho, a fitting start to their music on the show. We also have 2 more tracks available from Gung Ho. We'll tell you a bit more about the artist out of Evansville, Indiana, making alternative and electronic music, bringing it right to you right here on Megaphone Local. That one from earlier in 2025. This next one from his latest album, it is Passion from his album Oops, right here on Megaphone Local. This is Passion. Gabriel Dennis is the mastermind behind the project Gung Ho out of Evansville, Indiana. Back in October of 2024, he was featured in News for You Evansville magazine. If you go to his social media, Gabe is Gung Ho. He has an entire post dedicated to that article featured in that News for You Evansville article. A lot of great information from earlier in his music career. Since then, he has released at least 4 or 5 albums, EPs, whatever you want to call them. A lot of great music from Gung Ho. Once again, Gabriel Dennis, the mastermind behind Gung Ho. I really enjoy these instrumentals that he has kind of created in the last couple of years. Once again, a lot of great music from the artist Gung Ho out of Evansville, Indiana. One more from Gung Ho, it's Skipping Town, once again off of the latest release, the album Oops from Gung Ho. This is Skipping Town.
89.1 The Bash. WVJC Mount Carmel, Illinois. A Wabash Valley College broadcasting station.
It's no big surprise. It's not just a fantasy. Whoa. We'll have a good time. The kind that comes easily. Whoa. We don't need to hide. I already see what you've been doing, and I've made up my mind. I've made up a reason to be discreet. I need what I want, no. I need what I need. And your secret is safe with me. I'll meet you at home, but you got a friend, I see. Whoa. I'll leave you alone, 'cause that's not how I wanna be. Whoa. Just give it some time, and I won't even need to say it to you, 'cause I've made up my mind. I've made up a reason to be discreet. I need what I want, no. I need what I need. Your secret is safe with me.
Your Secret is Safe with Me by Damion, the artist Damion, out of Bloomington, Indiana, recorded in collaboration with Russian Recording, a music production studio out of Bloomington, Indiana. I believe Damion also works at that studio as well. So that was, once again, Your Secret is Safe with Me from his 2022 album Special Interest. These next two tracks are off his most recent album release, I'm Gonna Lose Control. Here is Rewind by Damion right here on Megaphone Local.
It's not the end as far place we can run to when the peril is high. So take it and run. Somebody's freedom, maybe it's gonna hurt someone. How could I be so many things in so little time?
That was Modern World by Damion, once again out of Bloomington, Indiana. Kind of gives me a bit of a Rex Orange County vibe. Great stuff from the artist, once again out of Bloomington, Indiana. We're going to keep things rolling here. Already past the 5 o'clock hour, we're going to keep it rolling with a Modest Proposal back into the 812 out of Evansville, Indiana. It's Watering Dead Plants by A Modest Proposal right here on Megaphone Local. Based out of Evansville, Indiana, that was A Modest Proposal with Watering Dead Plants off of their Let Them Smell Flowers album from 2024. Their first release and their only album release so far, but impressive enough, they have just completed a Midwest run with only one album. They performed in Chicago, Illinois on the 20th of June, Cleveland, Ohio on the 26th, and then the following day in Fort Wayne, Indiana to close things out on the 29th in Detroit, Michigan. They say their next show is going to be in Evansville. I haven't seen a venue or anything for that yet, but an impressive run nonetheless by A Modest Proposal. Once again, an alternative rock band out of Evansville, Indiana. Here is Silver Hair next up for A Modest Proposal.
We'll
Silver Hair by A Modest Proposal out of Evansville, Indiana. Up next, another 812-based band. It's Grow Blind, 812 Hardcore. This is Born to Lose by Grow Blind. Some Evansville hardcore for you. That was Grow Blind with Come and Get It off of their self-titled Grow Blind EP. They've got some shows coming up. On July 22nd, they will be playing in Bloomington, Indiana at The Roses with a host of other bands, including one a hardcore punk band from Houston. And then where else but the Damsel Brew Pub on July 25th with bands such as Basic Needs, Mechanism, and another Evansville-based band, High Strung. So 2 live shows for Grow Blind coming up. Go support the band in Bloomington and in Evansville, Indiana. Up next, it's The Snakes right here on Megaphone Local. Keep that dial tuned. It's Anna by The Snakes.
Oh, darling.
That was Anna by The Snakes, a progressive blues punk band hailing from Evansville, Indiana, formed in 2014 by vocalist and guitarist Travis Thompson and drummer Dylan Woodall. They released their debut EP, One, originally in 2016, following a re-release in 2020 with the addition of, quote, the hole from which worms can crawl out. Telling the story of sins, the Snakes exist in a pre-apocalyptic world and only present themselves in times of great stress to people on the verge of total collapse. Their songs are tomes that tell the tale of the end of the world and the people who caused it. This is another band that hasn't released music in a while, since about 2021, I believe, from which you just heard their number 2 album. So that was Anna by The Snakes. They haven't released some music in quite some time, but totally all right. We're just going to spread the word anyway. It's some great stuff. Up next, Rapture, also from their number 2 album. It's the Snakes from Evansville, Indiana, a progressive blues punk band. Here's Rapture by the Snakes on Megaphone Local.
Mount Carmel, Illinois, a Wabash Valley College broadcasting station.
The set laid bare, hollow words of winding stare, juxtaposed when arriving is prose, like mud and blood caked golden hair. Tightly gripped slit vestigial ear, decide what's good and what's to fear. Substantial overstated declarations, proclaiming you're the best dressed in the room. Inflating cabaret, jolly irritating. Take a clue, find a mirror, you know.
Wade Found Wanting by Together in Dust, a post-hardcore band out of Evansville, Indiana, off of actually that was a single from the band Together in Dust. They're actually playing at Your Brother's Bookstore in Evansville, Indiana tonight with two other bands from Chattanooga, Tennessee, an indie rock band by the name of Agi, and 20-something Summer, I believe. I may be reading that wrong, but either way, those three bands will be playing at Your Brother's Bookstore tonight. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. The show is at 7, and it requires a $10 entry fee. So if you're listening and have no plans, you can head over to Your Brother's Bookstore at Evansville, Indiana for some great local music and for two bands from Chattanooga, Tennessee. One of them an indie rock band and one of them a ska band. So up next, Sunny Morning by Together in Dust right here on Megaphone Local. Sinful Land by Together in Dust, a post-hardcore band out of Evansville, Indiana, wrapping it up for Together in Dust. Our final band on the show in the final minutes of Megaphone Local is Intruder, a death metal band out of Kentucky. This is Algal Asphyxiation from the Den of Deformity EP. Homicidal Drug Trance by Intruder off of their Den of Deformity EP released back in April of this year. One more song from Cell Intruder, but first, they are performing this Saturday, July 5th, with bands such as Murderace, Lethal Combat, let's see here, Flesher, Lethal Combat, Murderace, and Goose Hydra at the Portal in Louisville, Kentucky. Doors open at 6 p.m. this Saturday. The show starts at 7. A $15 ADV and $20 dose. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but you can go to the Portal Louisville Instagram and get all of the details there. Our last song is Blunt Force Cranial Dissection to wrap up today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody, and a big thanks to all of the great local musicians we featured on the show here today. This is Blunt Force Cranial Dissection by Cell Intruder, right here to wrap things up on this week of Megaphone Local. One more time, let's hear it for all of these great local musicians on this week of Megaphone Local. Let's hear it for Thunder Dreamer, The Bottle Snakes, Grow Blind, Prairie Scout, Damion, Cell Intruder, Memory Motel, Tearful Warning, The Snakes, Gung Ho, A Modest Proposal, and Together in Dust. Once again, thanks so much for all of those great local musicians for being on the show, sending in their music, whether it was you who reached out to me or me who reached out to you. It was a fun one. We're hoping to do this a whole lot more in the future on Wednesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. That is every Wednesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Unless we've got to switch things up, which we did last week. We had an interview with Connor Michael, who is performing, by the way, tomorrow at Southwest Park in Fairfield, Illinois, alongside Legally Sheila, the band Legally Sheila, also based out of Fairfield, Illinois. It was a fun one. We're going to kick it back to programming here shortly, but once again, if you are a local musician wanting to get the word out about your music, your events, everything having to do with your band, email the show at megaphonlocal@gmail.com or reach out to us directly via Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or wherever you can find us. We will do everything in our power to get you on the air. Thanks again so much for tuning in to Megaphone Local today. We're going to kick it back to our regular programming with Higher Than Most by Will Dorado. Thanks again for listening to Megaphone Local. This is Higher Than Most. by Will Dorado right here on 89.1 The Bash.